So as discussed in previous part, I added the logic to generate random index. Based on that index, I'm going to retrieve a certain object with a quote and the author from the array. And right now everything is working. When I press the get a quote button, I get a new quote and the author displayed on the screen. Animations are not added yet. That is going to be something I'm going to be adding later on. For now, basic functionality is working. To achieve this functionality, first thing, I import quote blob from my assets into this component. And second, I set the initial state for quote and for the author. So two new functions were created in order to do this functionality. New quote selector, all it does is just gets the quote from the array and displays it on the screen. And the second one is a helper function which generates the random index based on the length of the array. One quick thing I wanted to point out. Since those two functions are inside the class, technically those are methods, but in JavaScript world everyone calls them functions, so I'm going to continue as a functions. When user presses get a quote button, I generate random index within array quote array bounds, do basic checks just in case, and then display contents of the object that was retrieved based on that index. Since set state is an asynchronous, I use a callback to go ahead and keep track. Well, this is my way of keeping track, let's put it this way, of the quotes that were already shown to the user, and I simply remove this object out of the quotes array. And once this array gets empty, that means all quotes were shown, it resets. As I'm testing my work, I have noticed small styling issue. If I set the font in horizontal position and I have a long quote, it may stretch beyond the book frame. To fix that, I have to match the width of wisdom text wrap to width of book frame. And to do that, I'm using a small trick with onLayout callback. Using that onLayout, I can read the height and the width of that view and then pass the width to the kit. And the reason I have to do this because wisdom text wrap is actually having position absolute. Yeah, this is my way of solving it. I'm pretty sure there are better styling solutions to without using callback. So now that I can select the quote by pressing get a quote button, it's time to go ahead and add animations. I have already added animation to a quote. So now when I hit get a quote button, old quote disappears in animated fashion, new quote is selected and appears in animated fashion. To achieve this type of animations and do not overload myself with details on how to do it, I've decided to use a library called React Native Animatable. Essentially, this is a wrapper around Animated API. In my original application, I was passing type of animation to Animatable through state, but in this case I can see that I can use refs, and on top of it, I can synchronize it because it's a promise-based. So I read through the docs and I selected animations that I like and placed them into the lists. I have a list for animations out and I have a list for animations in. Then I am going to create or call random index and select random animation, and that's going to be separately for the quote and separately for the author. This is how it will look more interactive. And on top of it, I decided to move all this logic into a separate file, so I will not clutter my main app page. Following the documentation, all I have to do is wrap my text that I want to animate with Animatable, create a ref to refer to it, and use native driver to make all the calculations related to animations on the native side to improve performance. I've created a function called start quote animations, which is going to be called when user presses get a quote button. So when this function is executed, I go ahead in my component and select animations for quote and author for in and out. For now, I only have a quote animated, so I call the quote ref, place the animation for out, give it the duration, And once it's executed, I pass animation into new quote selector. So the new quote selector selects new quote, and then it respectively runs animation in. And this is how this effect achieved. For now, it's just a quote, but I will add, of course, author as well. In this part, I'm going to animate author. So both quote and author will be animated when quote is being selected. It follows exactly the same logic as previous. All I did is just edit the author ref and pass the animation type to it. Also, I do the same thing as I did with the quote. On press button, I animate it out, and once quote is selected, it animates back in. So I added condition just in case not to run extra animation, because on the very first iteration the author is empty string, which respectively refers to falsy. And now when I press get a quote button, both the quote and the author are being animated.